Welcome back and thanks for tuning in. I'm Nick, and this is Super Simple Security Principles, where we talk about digital security principles that are easy to understand no matter your skill level. We are part of the I Hate Passwords Digital Self Defense Academy, or IHP Academy for short. For the listeners, I want to give a little insight into our show. I get a small piece of information, usually one sentence or less, about our given topic. Not a lot of information to turn around and help host a podcast about security principles. Good news, I'm not the security expert. I end up learning as we go. We, myself included, as a team, chose to do this intentionally. It is our desire to let me learn alongside our listeners on these topics to show you're not alone. So many people share your same questions about security. Remember, by listening, you're doing that. You're learning and leveling up your security. Congrats.
I just want to say thank you for that, Nick. I appreciate you sharing that insight, and I'm glad you brought it up because I think it's become very quickly in just a few episodes we've done it a really critical part of how we've approached it, and we've got so much good feedback on it. But at the same time, I fully acknowledge the courage it takes and the unsettling, especially with your anxiety and everything. And so just want to say thank you. I'm grateful for it. I think having our listeners represented is of immeasurable value to them.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And to our listeners, I don't mind so much. I enjoy learning as we go along. So, all right, that's a little insight into our show. Today's episode, we are asking the question, do I need a VPN? And I asked myself, what do I know about a VPN? Not a lot. And for that reason alone, joining us today, our Master Guardian, Makani. All right, let's get started. Do I need a VPN?
Okay, so at first I was going to go through how a VPN works, what it is, those kind of things, the standard introduction. But I decided to take a little bit different approach. Instead, we're just going to look quickly at the four main reasons I found that people use a VPN. And we'll
Nice.
explore some of those more in future episodes. And at that point, we may dive into how a VPN works more if it seems useful for that topic.
Okay, so
Sound good?
today, 4 top reasons. Here we go.
Yep. Now you said you don't. You've have you used a VPN, Nick?
No, I have not.
Okay.
I'm not.
Do
No, very little.
anybody in your circle uses one at all? You've heard about or anything? Just
Do you
curious
know
to.
what? I know of a few people that have got a VPN just because they've been taken advantage of. In fact, a couple of them in our dojo, in fact. Um,
Mm.
uh, but I don't know if they really understand it. And frankly, I don't know if I really understand it. So, yeah,
Okay.
not really.
Cool. Right. Cool. Thank you. That's fine. I just wanted to check in with that. So the reason number one is location restrictions. There are many websites that restrict you based simply on where you live in the world. And a
Really?
VPN can be, yeah, there's, for example, there's different reasons for doing it, but some of the big categories are streaming, television shows, and sports coverage and news coverage. A lot of them don't want you to access it outside of their country for whatever reasons.
Interesting. I see the sports thing. I've always tried to get into sports, and for whatever reason, sometimes based off my location, I don't get certain
Yep.
programs.
And you can get around all that with a VPN.
Really?
Yep. Yep, and it's the most common reason that people use VPN is so they can get access to more stuff.
Hence the reason
Yep.
it's number one on our list. Okay.
Yep, exactly. And like for Kem, we know He lives in New Zealand, but he grew up here in the United States, has a United States bank account, other things, and they block him a lot of times because he lives in New Zealand. And in that case, what they're trying to do is their premise is if it's a US bank account, then anybody outside of the US doesn't need to be accessing it. And so it's a security protection on their side.
Gotcha.
Misguided though it is, right?
Right,
Because
right, because it really is him.
yeah. So that's another case anyway, and that's one that he uses a lot. So in a very similar vein, but a little bit different, and I thought worth mentioning is censorship, particularly by governments. And the unfortunate thing with this is governments now, the awareness of VPNs and the use to bypass censorship is high now. And there have been actions taken to shut down the VPNs to prevent them from being used for this purpose. Thankfully, not the United States government yet. Cross our fingers. But earlier this month, for example, Russia demanded that Apple take all the VPNs off their app store in Russia for this very reason.
Really?
Yep,
So they can control.
yep, and Apple did it. And I understand that's a big topic and I don't want to distract too much, but I shared it because Russia, as you know, has kind of a near and dear place in my heart. I lived there back in 1997 and 98 for 2 years, and I love the Russian people. And this is just one more sign. There's obviously a lot of sad things going on there. And this is just one more sign that Russia is increasing their censorship and control over its citizens and trying to restrict the tools that are available to get past that censorship. So we'll leave it at that for today.
Okay.
Reason number 3 is privacy. If you want privacy specifically from your internet service provider, which is just the company that you pay each month to get internet access, then a VPN can be useful. Now, if you're looking for more comprehensive privacy than that, it's much trickier and involves a lot of other pieces. Don't be confused. That's one of kind of the VPN myths is VPN just gives you privacy. And it's a piece. And if it's just your ISP, then that'll do. But we're going to have more episodes on that. Love to hear
ISP.
questions. Oh, ISP, sorry, I shortened it, Internet Service Provider.
Oh, okay. I should have known that one.
No, thank you for calling that out. It's such a deep part of my thing. I spit it out with forgetting it. So, yeah. And then the last one and the main one we're talking about today, because this is the one that's actually about really protecting yourself, is public Wi-Fi.
Okay.
And there's a lot of opinions on this, but my opinion, and this has kind of been interesting as I've worked on this episode, but is if you use public Wi-Fi, especially if you use it frequently, I do recommend you use a VPN while you're on public Wi-Fi. And it's not the only thing you'll need to do to stay safe on public Wi-Fi, but it's an important piece of the puzzle. And I have on the list already planned out in a future episode where we will talk about the whole picture of how you stay safe on public Wi-Fi. I do have a confession to make though.
Okay.
I personally haven't been consistent in my own use of a VPN on public Wi-Fi. And for me, this is mostly because I travel very little. As you know, Nick, traveling is not my favorite thing, which means my public Wi-Fi usage is extremely small. And I think yours is probably a lot based on what I know of your habits, right?
Right. Right. Absolutely. I was going to say we often are traveling, whether it's free Wi-Fi in the airport or in the airplane or hotel, etc. Yeah, we're connecting to public Wi-Fi somewhere.
Yeah, well, and I was thinking about it too with when you say that, I think, you stay at Airbnbs a lot.
Yeah.
And we might not think about that as public Wi-Fi, but really for our purposes of security, essentially it is, because it's not your personal one that you know and can trust.
Dude,
And
that's
so,
that's kind of super sketchy because I'm just thinking about this latest trip we had,
uh-huh.
and I stayed in an Airbnb, and I'm just thinking of what information they could have gleaned about me from my internet searches, about our next baseball tournament. Like legitimately, like they could have figured out where we were going, next town, like where we were going to rent a rental car from. Like all of this from our previous Airbnb's internet.
Yeah, and hopefully they aren't. I'm not going to suggest that this is a common problem, even in
Right.
Airbnbs. I don't know any stats on it, but and we'll talk about that more in just a second. But what I wanted to say is, I haven't been using it, right? But in preparing for this episode, I decided that it was time for me to level up my security in this area. Okay. And even though I still don't use public Wi Fi much, and I don't plan on changing that anytime soon, anytime I do, I'm going to be using my VPN. And I want to
Nice.
share two reasons why I decided to change that. And the first is basically a question of priority. I talk a lot about prioritizing your weakest areas first, which is one of those super, super obvious security principles, but one that is often overlooked. But for me, because I use public Wi Fi so rarely, it hasn't been at the top of my list.
Oh,
But at the same time, improving my security has been a priority for me for many years, and especially so the last few years. And I've finally gotten to the point, this was kind of the thing that pushed me over the edge, that I decided it was worth the time and effort to start consistently using a VPN on public Wi-Fi on all my devices.
okay.
The good news is it's not a lot of work. For me, the main thing is just building that habit of actually turning it on when I connect to public Wi-Fi. And the second reason why I haven't done it is because not really having a VPN option that I trusted enough that I wanted to invest that effort. And in large part, again, it wasn't a priority, so I hadn't done the research. But as part of all this, I have done more research, and Chem uses one more, so that helped with that. And I haven't been ready to fully commit to one. And as I love to remind our listeners, in the world of security, the wrong tool is worse than no tool. So I just haven't committed to it. But I found a VPN now that I trust enough to install and use consistently. And we're going to be
Excellent.
talking about that in our next episode.
Woohoo! There's a little
So,
tease. So if you want to know what VPN we're going to be recommending, tune into our next episode.
exactly. Yeah, thank you. And so then the next thing is, what is the threat on public Wi-Fi that a VPN can protect you from? Right? That's the big question. If I'm recommending it, why bother? And yeah, go ahead.
I was going to guess. Does it help
Okay.
encrypt some of my stuff? Like if I'm, like I was just thinking about the information I was filling out last time I was at this Airbnb, for example. And I was like,
Uh-huh.
man, if it would have kept that information encrypted, that would have been great.
Right. Well, it does. So normally, like at an Airbnb or even with your ISP, most of your traffic is already encrypted. The part that isn't is what websites you're visiting. They'll be able to see that you go to YouTube, or they'll be able to see you go to Amazon or Google. They won't be able to watch what you do there. They won't be able to see information you enter there, but they will be able to see what websites you visit. That's how it is. It didn't used to be that way, but these days, by default, website traffic, it's all encrypted. Now, this does add another layer of encryption, but and it's really technical, so I wasn't really actually going to go into any of the details of how those threats work or what exactly they are, but let me characterize it this way and see what you think, if it makes sense to you. It's the first thing is it's just not that common, especially compared to, say, phishing, which we talk about all the time and most people face every day, right? But
Right.
phishing is a very visible attack, whereas public Wi-Fi attacks, if and when they come against you, will most likely be invisible, and they have a much higher threat potential as well. But again, they aren't common, and it might never happen to you. But if it does, it could get really bad, which makes it for a kind of a tricky value proposition. And here's the way I thought of explaining it, since most of that's kind of very nebulous. It's like, okay, well, think of it like life insurance. Personally, I don't think I'm going to die anytime soon. So mostly that life insurance, it feels like a total waste of money to me. Yet,
Right.
I do have life insurance. I do pay for it. But some people don't pay for life insurance. And even if you do, everyone who does pays for a different amount, right? So there's definitely room for differences due to risk tolerance in the world of digital security. And what that all kind of boils down to is, yes, I'm deciding to use VPN on public Wi-Fi, but if you decide not to bother with a VPN on public Wi-Fi, I'm not going to yell at you.
All right.
So based on all that, how do you feel? What kind of priority jumps to your head? Given your risk tolerance and your evaluation of what I said, and yeah.
Look, the reason I personally like the VPN opera. Ask me the question again. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Are you inclined to start using a VPN on public Wi-Fi? Let me ask it that way.
Yes, actually, I am, only because of the traveling. Like, realistically, if it weren't for baseball, and I say that one thing because otherwise our traveling would be pretty minimal. We'd still have a few family trips here and there, but it wouldn't be like it is. And I'd have to consider it, would it be worth just that one cost to have that layer of protection is what I would look at it. But right now, absolutely.
Okay. No, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. Plus all the other reasons you gave me. I mean, can we list those four again? Do you want to list those four again for us? Because those first four were fantastic ones.
Yeah, well, right. So there's the location restrictions,
Right?
censorship, and privacy, particularly from your ISP. And this one, the public Wi-Fi, that's number 4.
Perfect. So
So
I
which I
mean,
have, yeah, go ahead.
which you had two subcategories underneath there, right?
Well, no, those are reasons about me not using VPN.
Okay.
Why I haven't more. So no, those are all the reasons. Um, yeah, but there's a couple more things I want to share about the public Wi-Fi here
Please.
that kind of.
Please.
So the most important point I want to make about the public Wi-Fi is, even if you decide you want to use a VPN, it doesn't mean that it should necessarily move to the top of your list just because it has reached the top of mine.
Mm,
Right? With it, the whole
right.
weakest point still applies. If you're still reusing passwords, for example, I'd start there. The risk to you is much more direct, much bigger. And that's just one example. There's tons of things that are more foundational to protecting yourself than using a VPN on public Wi-Fi.
Now, if you have questions about your where you're at in your security and you want to know what's the most pressing matter, we would love to hear from you. So reach out to us. Okay. There's a plug. If you have a question about where you're sitting in your current state, let us know. You can find us on the forum too, right, Makani?
Yep. Thank you. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. That. Um, and then one last thing on public Wi-Fi, and this is one super simple option that you can use. And what Kem does actually, because of the data plan that he has, is he doesn't use public Wi-Fi at all. He just piggybacks on his phone's internet data connection, even for his laptop or other devices. Now, that's not always possible, but sometimes it is and simply overlooked. So it's worth considering at least, because it's an even safer option than using a VPN on your public Wi-Fi.
Wow. Okay.
And super simple, right? If it's an option.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great option to have.
Yeah.
Which it seems like it's becoming more and more available.
Right. Unlimited data plans are, yeah, exactly. Cell phone, internet data,
Right.
it's growing and growing. Exactly. It is. So it's becoming increasingly viable. That's a good point. Okay, so I'm ready to do our call to action unless you have anything else you wanted to ask.
No, I think we covered it. That sounds fantastic. What's our
Okay,
call to action today?
so I've got a few questions that I want our listeners to answer. The first one is, do you want to use a VPN? And the natural follow of that is, if so, what for? And most importantly, how soon do you want to do it? And like we talked about, that can be a little bit tricky to know, and we'll help with that. But if you decide a VPN is at the top of your list, then I wish you well, make it happen. And if not, use this as a reminder to take whatever is at the top of your list and take that next step, push forward on your security journey. And then the last thing I'll say is just kind of a plug for next week. We talked about a little bit. If you decide to use a VPN, be careful about which one you use, because there's a lot of shady VPNs out there, a lot. More so than in maybe any other security tool category, honestly. And I found the question of evaluating the VPNs, even the one we're going to talk about, tricky. And it's a lot more nuanced than I would have expected. So, but we're going to be talking about ExpressVPN. It's a pretty old, in terms of VPNs at least, and very popular VPN.
Excellent.
So
So
look forward to
there's a
talking with you
little bit
next
of a
week.
warning right there. You know, don't just run and pick whatever VPN you find. Listen
And
to us,
especially,
stay tuned.
yeah, and especially not free ones.
Okay. I'm just going to keep tuning in so that I can hear what VPNs I should be using.
Sounds good. Thanks,
Excellent.
Nick.
Yeah.
Okay, that's our super simple show today. If you're not a member of the IHP Academy already, please come join us for free. Stop searching the whole internet for answers and never knowing who to trust. Ask us instead. We made it super simple to find us, and it only takes 2 minutes to sign up. Just visit helpmegetsafe.com. Enter your name and your email. You're in. You can also find the link in our show notes. Thank you for joining us, and make it a great day. Bye-bye.